Thank you, Jim. It's great to be here. Yeah, like I said, we're recording here, or presenting here from Minneapolis. I'm Mark Schlotteroff. I lead our Americas team for global field devices. Sophia, like Jim mentioned, is our global product manager for our HVAC actuators. And we were talking with Jim in the CG&A group and around about our direct coupled actuators. Wanted to do a presentation today. Part of this topic today is kind of a review of some of our portfolio. That'll be in the beginning, and it'll be fairly quick. Kind of a review of some of the features of the Honeywell direct coupled actuators, the benefits that are out there from a stocking perspective for distributors, as well as some labor-saving benefits for contractors. And so we'll kind of go through that. The next portion of our agenda is going to go through real quickly through our silk actuators, the communicating actuators, and what benefits those have. Talk a little bit about the new silk actuators that are coming. And then if we have time, I've got just a quick summary also of our fire smoke actuators at the end, just a summary on our fire smoke portfolio. So I think in all, we'll probably get through all of that in a 30-minute time period. So we'll go ahead and get started. As Jim, I think, mentioned, feel free to throw in a question if you have one, because we will be going through those three main sections. We'll try to stop as often as we can to go through questions. But yeah, send those down. Both Sophie and I are online. We'll try to watch the chat, and if something comes in, we'll try to stop and answer questions. So with that, I will go ahead and get started here. So just wanted to review and recap the Honeywell direct coupled actuator portfolio. This is really a nice kind of a layout graphic of the entire family of portfolio of actuators. If you break it down into the spring return and the non-spring return actuator portfolio, you'll start to see some very similarities as we go through that, and we'll go through those features and what is. But on the spring return side, the really comes down to a couple different physical sizes, ranging from low torque all the way up to high torque. From the 27 pound-inches on the small size for example, on your economizer dampers, all the way up to the 175 pound-inch spring return actuators for those built-up outside air dampers for air handlers, etc. So quite a range of torque levels, all with similar features. Then you can jump over to the non-spring return actuators. In the bottom, the first four that you see is really the portfolio. We have the final two on the right, kind of as a replacement piece that's still available. An older platform that is still available in our ML6161. I'm sure most people that have used the actuators is familiar with that family and still out there. But the other, which really has a similar torque range to the next two to the left. So when looking at the torque range for non-spring, it really goes from from the 44 pound-inch all the way up to the 300 pound-inch non-spring return actuators. So it's quite a range as well, with similar features that we'll go into in a minute. So that kind of breaks down the platform between the two areas, and we'll kind of now start to go into some of the details on each of those. So one of the areas to start with is on the, I'm going to move something on my screen here. So, really when you start talking actuators, right, it's nice to start to go into some detail about what does it do for the contractor? Is there features in it that makes the Honeywell actuators unique to give? Basically, it comes down to is how can you save a contractor time on a job for an installation, so that you can give them save some time for them, help them get it in a job, get it installed, and get off the job as quickly as possible. One of those areas is the shaft adapter. The shaft adapter on the Honeywell actuators is pretty unique in what we call whether it's a U-bolt or a self-centered shaft adapter. So most of the ones you see across the bottom, the three of them are to the right, have what we call a self-centering shaft adapter, which when mounted onto the shaft will, and you start to tighten just a single bolt, you start to bring two jaws together to really to center that actuator around the shaft to make sure that you're perfectly mounted so that you don't have any kind of wear on the gears, which ultimately allows your actuator to last longer in the field, get more rotations out of it, get more repositions and full positions. So on the one hand, it's good for the life of the product, but it also allows a quick, easy installation with just a single bolt. You're ensured that every time you're mounting it correctly. So it's very rigid, clamps really tight onto the shaft, and you're sure that you're not going to have any slipping on the shaft. The other thing is that these shaft adapters can be slid out and can be adjusted so that you can manually kind of position it. So that if you only want to travel something less than 90 degrees, you can do that. In every 5-degree increments, you can pull those out and you can have a mechanical stop on the rotation, so doing something less than 90-degree stroke. Going into another feature that helps both the contractor with models to stock as well as for the distributor, for you guys, is throughout our platform we're trying to include a mode selector so that you can have one model that will do multiple control signals. So on the non-spring return, for example, we've got the 2 position and the floating in one. On the spring return, we've got the floating and the modulating in one. So you can just adjust a potentiometer in the front of the actuator to select your control signal. In addition to doing like a 0 to 10 or 2 to 10, it can also do 2 to 10, 10 to 2 or 10 to 0. So you've got both directions. Again, so you can see the example in the upper right corner. Select the control signal that you have, and it allows you to carry one actuator to do multiple applications, so you don't have to worry about having the right actuator on the shelf or the right actuator on the truck. So it's a nice benefit, so you can go with lower inventory. The wiring access is very unique to Honeywell. All the actuators across the bottom, you will see a red end cap. It's not just for looks, and the color. And actually, each of those have an end cap that pulls off. You loosen one screw and you pull it off, and really that becomes a junction box. You can avoid having a junction box, a foot or 18 inches away from the actuator, because you can run your wires from the job all the way to the actuator and use this as your junction box, so you don't have to have pigtails coming off the actuator and using a junction box separately. You'll see, I think in the picture, you see where the wire is attached to on the screw terminals. You wire it up there. You slide the red end cap back onto the actuator, and away you go. Nice part about this is if you ever have to replace it in the field in the future, you can just slide off the end cap, install the new actuator, slide the end cap back on the new actuator, and away you go. You don't have to do any wiring because it's an area where you could just slide it off using the pin connections and avoid wiring any time in the future. Another benefit for the installer is that the wiring across all of our actuator portfolio is consistent. So you have a consistent terminal designation no matter whether you're using a floating model or a modulating model. You know that once you've learned one Honeywell actuator, it's the same across the platform. So the rest of the actuators wire up very, very, very similar. Easy to learn, but then once you've learned one, you've got them all. All right, I'm going to move this here. All right. So here's some of the other benefits. I'm not going to go through all these because some of these we've already touched. I talked about the self-centering shaft adapter and the axis cover. I haven't talked about conduit connections. All these on the end of the red end cap have conduit connections, so you can run, for those applications where you need to, you can run the conduit and connect right to the actuator. The non-spring return models do have a declutch button, so you can use that for manual positioning if you're doing some testing initially or positioning of the actuator prior to installation. You can do that, so you can use the declutch button. On the spring return, of course, it is a flippable housing, so whether you're going clockwise or counterclockwise, you can just flip it over, and nice quick solution, so you don't have to, again, stock more models. Talked about the signal mode switch on the cover. One of the unique things about Honeywell on the testing is the rated torque. Really, it's a conservative rating. When we say it's rated for 60,000 cycles and it's a 175 pound-inches, through our testing, we rate that to make sure that you're getting that amount of torque over the entire life of the actuator. So even at the last over the 60,000 cycles, every cycle you'll get that amount of torque. So you're no matter what the temperature of the ambient is around the actuator, no matter what if your voltage, if you're within your plus 10, minus 10, that kind of thing, you're always assured to get the same kind of torque level out. So very, very conservative ratings at Honeywell we've always had on these, so we're ensured to make sure that you're going to have the torque that you need on your job. We do have the constant runtime. That's always been a nice, when you're using, no matter what controller you're using, you want to make sure that you're consistent, so you know that you're always, these actuators are always 90 seconds from open to close. So you know that you're consistent, so you know where your position is at. And then, of course, the actuators do have an overload protection, so that if for some reason they did get, or the damper got stuck on something or what have you, they would stall out so that you wouldn't burn out an actuator. So that's all built into the entire portfolio. Some of the other things that are built in that are nice to have, obviously the 95-degree stroke. As you know, dampers are all 90 degrees, but a lot of the OEMs that make the dampers want a little bit extra close off, just to ensure that you're getting the close off and make sure you're not leaking through the damper. So they have the 95 degree just to get you a little bit extra. Some of them, models have their models with integral end switches, which is nice to have for various applications. So those, again, you pick the models that you need if you need the end switches. Talked about the range limits. You can see those on the front of the actuator, the mechanical stops. What else we've got here? Talked about the rated torque, and again, just overall, there's some of the various benefits from talked about the Honeywell wiring standard, etc. Overall, between the installation and the lower SKU count on the shelf, the number of benefits that help get you there to make sure that you have the right product for the job and hopefully quickest installation possible. This is just a slide kind of showing one of the actuators and where some of these features are at. All of these features that we've been kind of talking about here gets you the 5-year warranty. Across the portfolio that you see in the lower right, basically the low, medium, and high torque in the non-spring and the spring return portfolio have the 5-year warranty. So you're sure that you're going to get the stroke, get to the rated strokes that Honeywell rates these at, and you're going to get a 5-year life minimum out of the product. So that is available across the portfolio that you see here. Sophia, is there anything else that you wanted to cover on this one? I just wanted to make sure there's a lot of these we've covered already, but just wanted to see if there's anything else I've missed.
No, I think you did a good job covering it. Thanks, Mark.
This slide I'm not going to go into detail, but this is available if for some reason if you wanted this. This is the nomenclature for the Honeywell actuators. Each of the digits in the actuator do have a reference for something. For a long time, Honeywell's had M for an actuator or motor, and then from there, and the spring return and the torque levels and the control signal, etc. So this is always available if you need it. We can get you a version, or you can always contact your Honeywell sales rep to get you through it if for some reason you're trying to put one together. Sometimes it's nice, you kind of know what you need. This with the torque level and a control signal, really you can kind of get the rest of the way there with something like this. All right, just stop there for a second to see if there's any questions. That's kind of a review of our current actuator portfolio. We've got just a couple slides going to on silk, but before we do, just want to see if there's any questions out there. Not seeing anything at this point. All right, why don't we go into some of the new stuff on the silk piece of it, and we'll move ahead. All right, so silk-enabled actuators. So this says Zelix at the top. Zelix is actually the one in the upper left, and then we have the high torque actuator in the lower left. Silk refers to a silk bus. It's a communication protocol that Honeywell has on our controllers. On the Honeywell controllers, Silk is a 2-wire polarity insensitive bus that allows you to communicate between your controller and your actuator. The reason we've offer this is for a number of reasons that we'll go into, but really we've had micro on these actuators for about 10 years now. And what Silk allows us to do is to pull that data in that micro on the actuator out of the actuator and start to get that data into the controller, let you do things with the data, make decisions upon that data, and whether it's diagnostics or preventative maintenance, things like that, things that you can do if you have the right information. So the Silk bus allows you to pull that data out of the actuator, and you'll see that some of the examples here about cycle count and override and actuator status and actuator position, and these are great things to have if you could pull that into a controller. Well, finally we were able to do that and offer a lot of value to that, whether it's the contractor, maybe the installer, probably more likely the building manager that's going to maintain that building throughout its life. The controllers that offer the Silk bus is we initially had it on the initially pulling these actuators into the Jade controller, and now the Spider controllers also pull in the actuators. We've had on Spider, as you know, the Silk bus for the wall modules, and now we can pull in the actuators as well. All right, so what are the? Let's go into some of the detail of the Silk bus system, and what are the benefits of it. So, for example, if you're using specifically Zelix, for example, with Jade, what you can do is, for a couple of these areas, is you can go on Jade when you're setting up an economizer, you can set it into test mode, and when you're in test mode, right, on the economizer system, you want to check everything out. That includes the actuator. You want to check to make sure that the actuator is driving full open, driving full close, maybe driving to a mid position and then springing close, things like that. Well, every time you drive open or drive close, that's in 90 seconds normally. Well, now that you have the ability to just go into test mode, you can actually run the actuator at a faster speed, so you can reduce time again on the job site to allow you to drive that actuator much faster than you would normal. Normally, you'd want that 90 seconds, but when you're in test mode and you have a technician looking at the rooftop unit, you don't need it to take the full 90 seconds. So this allows you to speed it up. Cycle count is information that shows up on the controller as well. That's a nice area where you can manage that equipment, do some preventative maintenance. If you see that an actuator is beyond your 60,000 cycles, maybe you want to replace it, for example, before you actually have a failure in the field. Just nice information that you can make those decisions. Contractor can talk to the end user saying, hey, do you want to do some preventative maintenance before it's an emergency. The Silk bus, by the way, is a polarity insensitive bus, so it's easy to wire up. You don't have to worry about crossing the wires. As you guys probably know, on the wall modules, it's just a 2-wire system that also powers the wall module. For actuators, you do have to run 2 separate wires for power to get enough power to control the actuators. But really, it's 2 wires for power and 2 wires for the control bus. Nice and easy to wire up. Is available on the Jade, the style, the over and under voltage information that's pre-programmed into the Jade economizer to show up. When you get into the Spider, that's when you start to get more information. You can get more information on the actuator, and we'll show some of that as well. All right. The other benefits really that you get out of when you move to a digital controller rather than an analog, right? Analog is, a 2 to 10 volt signal is really analog. Now that you're digital and you're a communication bus, you can actually get or improve your accuracy, your repeatability, and resolution of the actuator, getting much tighter control. I know at times you can get down to the point where, much tighter control than you'd ever need in an HVAC application, but that's the technology that's available now is by enabling a digital control. You really get a micro in the controller talking to a micro in the actuator, talking one-to-one. So it's a nice controllability that you've got. When you're using it with a Spider, you can, again, change the speed on the actuator, even during the real time. So if for some reason you had an application where you wanted to do that, you could do that, program through the Spider. You can put up to 5 actuators on a single bus. I think the total limitation on a silk bus is more like 16 modules, but for actuators you can do up to 5. You can do more, other devices on it. Let's see. There is some of these silk models do have an analog output, so that you can control a second modulating actuator off of the first one. So that's a nice feature to have. A lot of this, as you see, is you're starting to avoid I/O on your controller. So you can control a larger piece of equipment with a smaller controller, because instead of having a large controller with a lot of I/O on it, now your I/O has become through the silk bus, and you can control, like I said, up to 16 devices. So you can control a piece of equipment much larger. You don't need as much I/O because a lot of the I/O is just going through the silk bus connection. Let's see. Jump to the next one. This one will kind of go into. This is some of the benefits of also what the actuator can do, and some of the, when you're getting into Spider and you're doing a fully programmable, right, you can do a lot more control. Some of this, what you see on this screen, is not available through Jade because that's a pre-configured economizer controller. But through Spider, you can do some of the things. Some of them, which I mentioned on the lower left, is the timing of the actuator. But there's some other areas that it can do as well. And Sophia, if you want to get any examples here.
Sure. So this is the typical silk screen that you'll see when you're accessing through the Spider controller. And when you've identified the silk actuator, these are the types of controls that you'll be able to have access. So as an output from the Spider, there's really 2 things you're going to be able to control. One is the actuator position, and the other is the actuator speed. So you have the ability to go 0 to 100% on the actuator position, and the speed, you have the ability to change it all the way from 30 seconds to 180 seconds on the 3 and the 5 meter models, and 45 to 180 on the larger torques, the higher torques. Now you also have the ability to receive information into the Spider controller, which will allow you to do diagnostics. And the nice thing is that you can actually, over the silk bus, you have the ability to look at the actuator position, so it provides you feedback. It also gives you the ability to monitor the cycle count of your actuator. You now have a way to know how many cycles it's gone through, so you can do some preventative maintenance. You also have the ability to determine whether the actuator has stalled or not. This is based on reading a VA rating. And you can do a manual override if you want to put it in test mode. You also have the ability to actually measure the peak VA if that can add value again for a diagnostic. So a lot of communication, a lot of feedback back to the Spider controller that you can use for diagnostic capabilities.
All right. Just got a couple of slides here on what it looks like if you're either wiring with or without silk. So if you had a Spider controller before and you weren't using silk bus, right? You'd have several wires coming from your outdoor and your return enthalpy sensors, right? You'd have a couple additional wires for your CO2 sensor if you're controlling demand control ventilation. You have extra wires for all your temperature and humidity wall module inputs. So you've got quite a few there. In addition, you've got your wires to your actuator. So a lot of wiring configuration to manage and to deal with. Going to the silk bus on the next slide really ends up simplifying a lot for the installer. You end up using your 2-wire bus. You daisy chain all your components. That might be your I/O module if you have one. If you're doing a large system, all your sensor inputs, including your wall module, and then of course your actuator as well. So you've simplified your wiring a lot, taken a lot of wire out of the job, lowering your cost, lowering your time to wire things up. Again, trying to lessen the expense of being on the job. So the silk bus is quite an advantage, and still that's just on the time factor, not counting the fact that you can get a lot more data in the controller and do a lot more with it. So it's a great win-win for everybody. Here's a few of the part numbers I wanted you to be aware of. We have had the first three, which we call our Silk Zelix actuators. Those have been out since November. They actually might be a little earlier than that. I think actually since November they've been able to work with Spider. Prior to that, you could use them with the Jade economizer controller. So they've been out for longer with the Jade. So those three have been out on the market. There's one model, the first one that's a 27-pound inch, and then two of the 44-pound inch models. So the only difference on those two is with the auxiliary switch or without. So you've got that. Then on the other ones, though, now we've got coming is the high torque actuators. So you'll see there's two models for the 88-pound inch and two models for the 175-pound inch models. So these are all Silk models, Silk enabled with and without switches. We've got the okay to ship on the first two models of the 88, and then the 175 are still coming. We are at a unique position right now where we are looking to doing a couple test pilots. Sorry, not test pilots. More like case studies. So we were looking to do some pilots for a case study, and so we're going to be talking with you. If you've got a job coming and you want to run through one of these, let us know. We'll be able to provide some product for a case study because we're always looking to kind of get feedback on the Silk actuators. So that will be coming, but otherwise these four models are about to be released here in the near future. So I wanted to make sure you got the heads up on them. These will be the part numbers that are available and will be coming shortly. I think the last thing we have on the Silk is just a reference on what firmware and software you need to work with the Spider, to work with the actuators. This is very specific to which the firmware and software needed for the actuator piece of it. And so this, please note that the firmware on the Spider needs the 26.1. And then the software, the Spider tool needs to be 6.1.1. That was new as of the last quarter or two. All right, I'll stop right there. If we've got a little more time, I will go into the fire smoke actuator. But I wanted to see if there's any questions before Sophia has to drop off here. So see if there's any questions on either the actuators, HVAC actuators that we covered, or the Silk communicating ones.
You know, Mark, this is Jim. Maybe I can jump in here and just remind everyone, if you would like to ask Mark or Sophia a question, please type it in the chat box, and they will certainly get it. So that's how we're handling questions to avoid noise on the line. So if you have something, please type it in. Okay? Thanks.
So thanks, Mark. I just wanted to add that if there are people that are interested in participating in this program, we will be donating the actuators. We'd like to do a case study as you go through the installation process. So if you're interested, please go ahead and either IM us through the chat and give us your contact information. We'd love to work with you if there is interest.
And you can always contact your sales rep as well. They can always get in touch with us as well if you come up with one after today.
Thank you, Mark.
All right. All right, to get about 10 more minutes, we can kind of just quick summarize the fire and smoke direct coupled actuator portfolio. And we'll go through that, and then we'll see if there's any questions at the end. So this is our fire and smoke actuators. Very similar in a lot of ways. In some cases, even the footprint gets pretty similar. But in some ways, it is very, very different. And so I'm going to start out with, I think, a slide is on how they are different. Fire and smoke actuators are really actuators that control air through a building just in a life-threatening situation like a fire, right? So basically, they sit on a damp or the entire life and sit open until there's a fire in the building. So even though they're rated for example, 30,000 cycles, they may not get a lot of cycles on them. They sit open all the time, and the only time they close is when maybe if you go through testing. So if you do a testing here and there. So very different type of application. They're fast acting, right? You want them to quickly during the fire situation. So generally they're in that 15 to 20 second timing versus the 90 seconds that we mentioned before in the HVAC actuators. Like I said, they normally sit open during most of their life unless they have a situation where they need to close. They're all just two-position actuators, right? Once in a while they have a modulating, but most of these are just a two-position with a spring return used for the life. The situation where you need to close it to ensure enclosure. So it's really just a two-wire system that is open and closed, and it's going to sit open until you cut power. The new construction for this is controlled by UL, but there's a lot of stuff that's out there in replacement. Replacement is not regulated by UL. So the normal new construction controlled by UL says that the actuator needs to be attached to the OEM fire smoke damper when the building is put up, and that's how that happens, but not during the replacement. So the design is designed to withstand 250 or 350 degrees. All of the Honeywell actuators are at the 350 degrees. Obviously, that's a huge difference from the HVAC actuators that are designed up to 140 degrees. So that's one of the main differences on this. They have a few less cycles on it because, again, they rarely move. And so they have roughly half the amount of cycles ratings as the HVAC actuators do. And again, it's got some, because of the temperature ratings, it's got some different internal components than most of the HVAC actuators. So that's kind of a difference from some of these application requirements. Just in case you weren't aware, Honeywell's been in this piece for really about 15 years. We've had we introduced some products in the fire smoke actuators about 15 years ago. We've been working with all the OEMs for years and then designed and tested on their products and improved on their products. So Honeywell's really been the default on the OEM side, and after a number of years, there's millions of these actuators installed out there. But on the Honeywell side, but obviously there's others as well. So there's a big as things continue and they continue to get older and whatnot, there's always an opportunity for replacement. So I wanted to make sure that that you as a distributor are aware that it's a little different than HVAC, but it's in a lot of ways it has a lot of similarities. Wanted you to be aware of the opportunity as replacement opportunities come to you. All right, we'll jump to the next one. And like I said, all of ours are rated for the 350 degrees. So some things to think about for the standards, like if somebody comes in and wants one replaced, one of the things you got to be aware of is you want to always replace it a like for like, right? You want to make sure that what you're replacing is Honeywell has as much torque as what came out from before. So want to make sure that you have as much torque or more, and that you can handle the 350 degree ratings. So Honeywell recently came out with a new one, and we'll kind of go into that on how it's a universal replacement. But all of them are 350 degrees, so you don't have to worry about that. Yeah.
Mark, you're back.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Continue.
All right. So you're still on you can still see my slide.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So as I was saying, the one in the upper left was released about 15 years ago. The universal replacement was released in November on the right, and this is truly a universal replacement for distributors. It's got the same torque levels as the old ones had. It's got additional features that the old one did not have. For example, the old one had external switches that you had to slide on the front if you needed an external switch. Now you've got models that it's built in, so it's nothing additional to stock. All of these make 350 degree temperatures. That's nice. Has the same kind of timing, handles the same shaft size, etc. They've got a couple additional features on it that I will kind of go into here in a second. Here's just some pictures of the new actuator. I think everybody's probably seen this. Since this is a close-up, I'll point out a couple things. We've got some indication on what position it's at. If it's in this kind of position, it's at 0 degrees versus 90 degrees when it rotates. It's flippable now. Before you had to pick, again, the distributor had to know which one to stock and which one to sell for clockwise versus counterclockwise. Now you don't have to. They're flippable models. You've also got some new conduit connections on here, which is a really nice feature, just a snap-in conduit. So labor savings, again, you don't have to tighten any set screw down on the conduit. It's just a snap-in. If you're going to remove it, just you put in a flat screwdriver and it pops right out. Nice features to have. Simplify the shaft adapter for faster installation. The higher torque models before had 4 set screws. Now you only have 2, and now you have the position indication as well. Number of new features. So, kind of point out here, for you as a distributor, if you were to wonder, you know, well, what should I really stock? It really comes down to probably 2 models. Most of the fire smoke dampers in North America are line voltage, 120 volt. So it really comes down to the 2 models that are 120 volt models. These are the models right here that I got listed without switches. I didn't list the ones with switches right here. That's the most common. So by stocking the one on the top and the one on the bottom, that's your low and medium torque actuator. And that really gets you all of your, let's say 85 to 90% of your applications that would come in and needing a low and medium torque fire smoke damper actuator. That really meets most of the market. And I've got one more slide on the next one which will show you the high torque. So the new one that I showed before on this picture, this comes in a 30 and an 80. So it handles your small dampers, your medium-sized dampers, and the 2 models that really do that most commonly are those 2 models. That's the ones to stock and have available for contractors when they need them for replacements. Replaces a lot of old models. I just threw this slide in for reference, and this is my last slide. This is the high torque portfolio in the fire smoke actuators. We've had this one out for a while, but it again has very similar features. It's got the conduit connection, it's got flippability, and it's got this self-centering shaft adapter like we talked in the past hour. So a lot of features here on it, and the one model for stocking, again, is the one at the top. It's the line voltage model without switches. You could stock the one with switches. It's a little more expensive, but it's not bad. If you want it to be completely universal, you could do that. You see that we have 230 volt. That's really for international and the Middle East. It's most common. You'll see a little bit of low voltage in the U.S., but not very common. So really there's about 3 models that really cover your low, medium, and high torque fire smoke actuators. So today just wanted you to be aware of that for the fire smoke applications if you get questions for service and when contractors come in for over-the-counter stuff. And that's it for the fire smoke portion. So I guess I'll open up, see if there's any questions on that piece of it or any of the other areas before we sign off for today. So any questions out there?
Mark, has anyone, this is Jim, has anyone sent in electronically in the chat box any questions?
Not that I've seen, no.
Okay.
Nope.
Well, maybe we can just do a little wrap-up here, and while we are, if you're an attendee and you do have a question for Mark or Sophia, please feel free to type it in. I'll be glad to answer it. Mark, maybe you could tell us once again, is this PowerPoint available afterwards?
It is. I can make it available. Jim, is that something normally I'd send to you?
Yeah, or Peter. Send it to Peter.
Or Peter, okay.
And or me, either one. We can do it either way. And if you're on the call and you'd like to get it, please let us know, and we'll get it out to you. Okay. Well, you know what? I think we're going to. I don't see any questions. Do you guys see any questions? No? Okay. Well, let's do this. Mark, are we at a good stopping place here, sir?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Well, listen, I want to say thank you to you and Sophia. Thank you for a good presentation. Sorry there was some little funny, you bleeped out a few times, but it came back no problem. Thank you for putting this together, and I know, do you ever give out your contact information on presentations like this if someone would like to contact you directly? What about that?
Yeah, I can do that. I'll put it in my email to Peter.
Okay. So if someone would like to contact them, Well, let's do this. Thank you for being on the call. For all of you CGNA members, thanks for taking time out of your day. Peter, are we at a good stopping place here? We good to go?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Well, we won't. Let's let everybody get back to work. Mark and Sophia, thanks again. Good
All right,
presentation.
thank you guys. Have a good day.
All
See ya.
right, take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.